public comment. Okay, and move forward with new business. All right, I'd like to begin with Resolution 2024-58, adopting General Appropriations Act millage rate for 2025. Can I make a motion to discuss?
So, Supervisor, I think what we need is a motion to open a public hearing.
Fantastic.
Hear the comments from the public hearing.
Excellent. Thank you.
So moved.
Thank you. Thanks, Ken. I'd like to please move to open the public hearing on the budget. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bernice Linke. I live at Allen Mark Drive in Superior Township. I would like to again go back to the rock property. We have budgeted over 189,500. Actually, that's what's budgeted. I'd like there to be equity with the Parks and Recreation Department so that we can give benefit to the people with recreation funding. We saw that last year with ARPA funds. We've done some significant programming in that area, and I think it would be good to do that. I'd also like you to look at the Tree Preservation Fund for $247,000 to see where that money is going. We'll be watching that. The Law Enforcement Fund has almost $3 million in the undesignated funds. What is that exactly for? This is beyond what the contract is. I think that's important to look at. And speaking of along with that, we need a controller who can really educate the board on what is what should be going on in the funds to make sure that you understand it and that we're able to take advantage of things that other townships take advantage of. I talked a little bit about an administrative cost allowance or having a cost center where you put the administration salaries in there and sort of divvy them up among other funds. I think that would still be a decent idea to alleviate the pressure on the general fund and allow you more choices to do programming. Other than that, I think the budget seems pretty fair. I understand Mr. Harding's concern about the salaries because for years, they have got, or the staff have gotten a pretty good salary package. And unfortunately, last year, the board spent a lot of money on pathways and other things to where Mr. Harding is right. They're probably paying that price right now. And I think that should be considered as well. Also, a controller that's listed for Northfield Township right now is paid between $45 and $50 an hour. That might be a good idea. And I think it's a budget hearing, so I don't know why you would hold us to 2 minutes for a budget hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment? Okay. Right, so moved. All right. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Looking at line item A under new business. Resolution 2024-58, adopting General Appropriations Act millage rates for 2025. Is there a motion to discuss? Okay. Okay, thank you, Ken. Well, I'd like to move the resolution and open. Thank you. Okay, the resolution is on the table. Is there any discussion? I'm not sure.
The one thing, the resolution number here, the resolution says 459. On the agenda, it says 2024-58. So I don't know if that's just a clerical.
59 is for the budget. I believe 58 is for the millage rates.
Yeah. page 3, page 4 of 34.
I'm on the wrong page. I think.
It's all right. Okay. Is there any discussion on this item? Okay, I'd like to make a motion for us to vote on this item. A call for the vote. Everyone in support?
Yeah.
There is? Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Dabish, Yakine,
Yeah, aye.
Green,
Aye.
Lewis,
Yes.
McKinney, Robinson, yes, Schwartz,
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Okay, moving forward to item B, Resolution 2024-59, adopting General Appropriations Act 2025 budget for all funds.
I'll move the budget.
Okay.
I'll move that resolution.
Is there a motion to discuss?
Once it gets on the table, it's open.
Okay, perfect. So some of you are here tonight with concerns and some hard feelings about the state of the current budget. My intention with the previous numbers was not to impact the 3.5% that staff was anticipating. It wasn't until our team was working through the annual adjustments for the end of year that we recognized that the $1.6 million that had been reflected associated with the general fund reserve was more in the range of 300,000. And I found that deeply concerning, particularly since the November budget that was presented had this deficit spending upwards of 400,000. It was an impossible and an impractical budget. And I did what I could to put us into the black. However, even with this budget, we are still deficit spending. Some of the increases that you see built into this that haven't even yet, but built into the thinking, but not even have been fully reflected in what is in the table in front of us right now, is that our township is currently dealing with 14.1% increases in our healthcare costs, and our general liability insurance for the coming year is up 38.8% due to the variety of open claims that are currently against the township. These are serious and significant numbers. And when further taking into account the amount that our tax base and our revenue increases every year, it's only in the matter of 2 to 4%. 47% of our general fund goes to salaries and associated health services. Considering that all of our core functions beyond it leaves us very little room for a rainy day fund or to do programming that supports the public. Our controller, who can speak to this further, who's on the phone right now, did flag to this board in September that through the first couple of quarters that they were going to have to adjust the general fund reserves in the order of $800,000. At this time last year, our general fund reserve was closer to that 1.6 million. And at the end of the year, we're looking closer to 300,000. The proposal I have in front of this board today still has us deficit spending by upwards of $50,000. But once we reflect on our healthcare costs, it's going to be closer to 60 plus. The 2% raise that you see is an adjustment to these factors that are facing us. 2% is commensurate with what federal employees across our country are getting. The position is difficult, but I worked with what I could in the budget to reflect some of the issues that the community holds most dear and make sure that we are not affecting some of our most core promises to the public. And so for those reasons, that is how we are landing at the bulk of the budget and the employee spending that you're seeing in front of you. In addition to that, I worked with our controller to become more creative and find ways to consider how we were charging for our billing back to different departments, how we were thinking about our utilities, our rents, and our building costs across police, fire, and those that are affected by the general fund and buildings. And that was able to really calm down the way that our reserves are looking. So that is where we are from November, and those changes are significant. And for what it's worth, there were warnings out there that we were going to land in this position by spending, especially on a variety of special projects. But I will hand it over to our controller to further paint the picture of where we are today and how his information lent to the decisions that I am proposing before the board tonight.
Supervisor, I'm sorry, before we pass it over to the controller, I got a message that our Zoom participants can't hear the feature.
Okay.
I just wanted
Thank you,
to be aware
Dana.
for the
Thank
general
you.
public. Yep. Yeah, they said no audio. Yeah, they couldn't hear the audio.
Hello.
Here's Keith.
Hi, Keith. We hear you.
Hello.
Oh, okay. It just unmuted. It wasn't allowing me to unmute. I did want to say about the budget. First of all, I do resent the fact that Ms. Limke said that you need a controller. I'm getting feedback. I'm sorry.
Sounds like you have two.
I resent the fact that Ms. Limke said that you need a controller who will teach you about how the different funds operate. I believe that you all know how the funds operate. And, you know, that bothers me that an ex-trustee is still creating problems for me as the controller. And I am not going to participate in these meetings if she is there to talk endlessly about the controller. So that's number one. Secondly, on the general fund, we had 1.8 million at the beginning of 2024. And then, I'm sorry, 1.6. We had 1.8 at the beginning of 2023. So we had a deficit in 2023, and now in 2024, we're projecting a deficit of $1.3 million, leaving us total, we'll have approximately $500,000 in the reserves. Now with that, working with the supervisor, we are increasing the healthcare savings plan from $300 a month per person to $315. And as the supervisor spoke, our medical insurance premium, we found out 2 days ago, is going up 14.1% and our liability by 38.8%. And yes, we had a lot of spending in special projects over the last couple of years. We also had large increases that the board approved for various employees and the trustees over the last year. And that is affecting the budget. Also, some benefits were given that were not given in the past, as in certifications for employees. That was a new feature that was given in December of 2023. So that's the end of my presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. And do want to highlight the fact that we're not touching the wellness bonus, but increasing it. And we are not touching the certifications or the education bonus that, you know, affects the salary of staff. With that,
I
Trustee
have a
McKinney?
question. Keith, what is general fund reserve now? What do we have in there? Did you say
For
$500,000?
undesignated, Brenda, we have 1.6, but when we do the budget amendments on Monday, we are projecting a loss for the year in general of 1.3. So that'll bring it down to 300,000. And then we're adding another 200,000, moving funds from the Hyundai designated funds. So we will end up with $500,000, Brenda. And we are projecting a loss next year of approximately $60,000.
And that's in the general
in this
fund
current
reserve.
budget. Yes, the general fund reserves, we're going undesignated. We will end this year at approximately $500,000, which was $1.8 million in 2023.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Liability, the general liability for the township went up 38.8% this year. Yes,
The insurance policy.
That was from what now?
it went up, I want to say from 100,000 to 138,000. Any more discussion among trustees?
And yeah, may I say one thing more, Emily?
Please.
Okay, the two insurances I want the trustees to understand is not reflected in the budget you are looking at, because that was found out after these budgets were distributed. So the budgets do not reflect these changes to the insurance.
So the situation is more
Which
severe
will
than
have
we recognized a week ago.
yes, and we will have to deal with this in the new year with a budget amendments to reflect this.
So just for my understanding and for the general public's understanding, and I recognize this is a new administration, and so therefore we are all getting caught up to speed here. But under normal circumstances, we would ideally we would have had about 120 days to review the budget, and
At least.
right.
Yeah.
So these cuts would have been made public a lot sooner. And so I understand the frustrations around a lot of the cuts that are being made. I do have a question though, as a comparison to the general fund and then also utilities fund. My understanding is that the utilities operates as a almost essentially like a business,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And therefore they bring in their own source of revenue. So to Mr. Harden's point earlier, while I recognize the cuts across the board on the COLA expenses, going from the 3.5% to 2%. Again, given that we're operating at a deficit, makes complete sense to me. But since utilities operates as a separate enterprise, why is their COLA being affected?
Thank you for your question. My intention is to treat our employees all equally. And in addition to that, knowing that there are a variety of capital expenditures that are likely coming up in utilities, there needs to be some room for those sorts of improvements. Mr. Lockheed, do you have any comments on that?
No, just to say historically, we have always treated the non-union employees as a group for benefits. They have always been treated as one. We have not separated the funds. So that would be, and I agree with Emily that there are some capital expenditures that are coming up in the utility department in the future. The system is getting old, as Ken can attest to. And, but we have historically, and especially in the cost of living, it has gone across the board. We have not stipulated one fund getting different than the other on the non-union employees.
Right. So just for clarification, again, for my general knowledge and for the public's general knowledge, the reason why the fire department is receiving 4% as opposed to the rest of the employees receiving 2% is because they are unionized employees, correct?
That's accurate. Yep, we are locked into that contract.
Yeah, it's contract related, not that they're union. It's that a contract was negotiated with the township officials, and that was what came of the contract.
Mr. Schwartz?
So we are locked in.
Keith, I have a question for you. On the Plymouth Road path, we were to receive a grant from the state and the counties. I can't remember the exact number, 550,000,
550.
550. I don't know if we received that yet. And if we haven't received it yet, how does that factor in to the whole situation when we do receive the money?
We have set up a receivable, Ken. It is it is reflected on the books. So we have received part of it, but we have a receivable for the other part of it. This was all gone over with OHM, who managed that project. And so the figures were gone over with Nancy and me, and we booked the relevant entries. So that is already reflected, Ken. We're not going to come back and say that, we overstated the $1.3 million deficit for this year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I have more questions. Just so for my understanding, is there any way for us to project out how long we'll be operating at this deficit?
I anticipate that if we don't find ways to build revenue further, that we would continue pulling into our deficit funds. I do want to highlight that I worked with Keith to keep some of our core functions that most affect underserved communities, particularly transit, whole, and things that I felt were some of our, duties to take care of the public. But I expect that this would continue unless we were able to find some sort of alternative to our insurance policies, which, based on my conversations over the past week, seem highly unlikely. And my intention is for us and for our teams, we've been getting together as a departments on a weekly basis to be creative about ways that we can look at building revenue within our community without affecting our residents.
I do have a comment, it's not particularly about the expenditure side, but the revenue side.
Yes.
I think it will be better as we go through the year. Before I left, I got a report, I think it was from equalization, that showed that the township tax base grew at about 7.2%. So, sorry about that. And I was going through a couple of the neighborhoods over the last few weeks, and there's going to be finishing out. I think the Woodside Village will be finished out.
Yes.
Those will be going on the tax roll, and then also the Prospect Point West.
Yeah.
Every one of those will be going on the tax roll for probably about 350,000,
Yeah.
and maybe a little less, 300,000.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see some growth through the year, but right now
Mhm.
I'm with you. It's managing the expenditure side
Yes.
the best we can.
And our assessor did her best to project how things would look in 2025, not including totally some of those new builds that are coming online that can boost us a bit, but it's still
A lot.
tight. It's very tight.
I have a question. Are you still there, Keith?
Yes.
Are there any
Yes.
cuts that we need to look at that can help balance the budget or help our deficit?
Are there any what, Brenda? I didn't get the word.
Any cuts or adjustments that we can make
Oh,
to
oh.
help our deficit?
Well, the only thing that I could say, Emily and I looked at it quite thoroughly, and we cut a lot, as people who saw the original budget pointed out today. The only other cuts, would be employee related. I mean, I don't know what plans are for future hiring, but I think that the board needs to look at hiring and where we go from here in the future. I don't know what kind of openings are out there right now. But, a lot of our costs, as Emily stated, are really driven by the employees. Almost half the costs in the general fund are driven by the employees. So I would say, the best place to look would be in future hires. Other cuts, Brenda, we went through thoroughly and cut many, many things out of the budget, out of the original budget. So it's pretty bare bones as it is right now. So that's what I would say to that question.
So
Emily?
Thank
ahead.
you. I guess to the board, I want to just say, and please add any input, maybe we need to, since we have a shortfall in our in our general fund reserve, we might need to look at freezing hiring and look at approving salaries until we can have an comprehensive evaluation on salary increases. And we want to make sure that all employees are treated fair. Like we said, 2%, if we did a comprehensive evaluation, maybe they can get more than 2%, maybe they can get 3%. But right now, we're sort of like rushed into it. We haven't had a chance to sit down and look at anything. Ricky said 2%, maybe we could do 3%. Let's have a comprehensive evaluation on raises before approving tonight. There's nothing that's saying we have to rush into it. We haven't really had a chance to look at anything, especially the new board members. So what I am suggesting is maybe a motion to freeze hiring.
So Brenda, point of order, we have a motion on the table now.
Yeah, and I just want to add that we do have a deadline and it's the 15th.
That we have to approve this budget.
Yes,
A budget. Yeah.
yes. We got everything so late and we're like to the end. We do have a deadline of December 15th.
And to Dana's point earlier, where this has been sprung on staff, employees, and on the community, this is generally a 6-month or more process. And it's my intention going forward to making sure that I am working very closely with staff, working extremely closely with our department heads, which we've been having our weekly cadence together and working to making sure that we're shifting towards a more inclusive culture, and a culture where we can have those conversations before we rush into decisions, and also recognizing where the overlaps are in our functions.
So whatever decision we make tonight, we can make an amendment later on.
We can make amendments. Ken?
I was only making the point, Brenda, that we had a motion and support on the table for the budget. So I didn't want to stray from that into other areas until we have a resolution of this. But when this is done, maybe you want to make a motion. I don't know.
So I want to go back to the revenue because something that caught my eye. I just want a little bit of clarification on, and either Emily or the controller, Keith, if you could speak to this. So I was just having a hard time understanding. So we had in 2024, it was about $683,776 accounted for in grants. That was an amended 2024 budget. Through the first 2 quarters, January through June, I see $0 of that grant money spent. So 2 questions. One, what was that grant money? And then 2, like how much of it has been spent to date? Because I see that in 2025, none of that money is left over. So just want to get a more clarification around that.
Yeah. Keith, can you speak to the 680 in grants, please?
Point of clarification.
You're talking about in the 2024. Well, that money, that is what Ken is talking about this money coming in from the county, and that's for these pathways. That's what it's for. And when this budget was done, this only goes through actuals through June. So money has arrived after June against that 600,000. So to answer Dana's question and Ken's, when Ken, you asked about how we're going to handle this Plymouth Pathways issue, that is where it's at, where the receivable is. It's sitting under the grant line. We put it under revenue. We do not net it against the expense line for the path. We separate the money coming in from the expenses going out. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
If I could make a comment.
That is, yes.
Okay. Mr. Schwartz, a comment?
Well, there's a lot of community support for the paths. And as we have discovered, even though we are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from SimCog, the state and the county, we do have to make a match on all of those grants.
Right.
And oftentimes, the estimates by the engineers, not saying anything about OHM, but just even like through SimCog and the county, cannot anticipate every unforeseen challenge.
Sure.
For example, on the bridge on the Prospect Road path, we had estimated the cost of lumber to be X. I
Mhm.
can't remember what it was, but if you remember, cost of lumber tripled during COVID, and that was an unforeseen event.
Sure.
So there is going to be money that we have to spend out of reserves for paths,
Mhm.
because if we don't spend it, and don't match the grants, we're just never going to get the money, and we can't afford to build all these paths by ourselves.
I certainly agree with that. And I also want to flag that the spending was not only on pathways that we saw coming up last year, there were a lot of other special projects that drove up the costs and affected the general fund reserve significantly.
Yeah, and then too, I just want to make a comment that moving forward, I will get more involved with the controller and Nancy, and also work with Emily. Yeah, so I can have a better understanding as well.
Thank you, Angie.
Mhm.
Right. Should we call the vote? Any other comments? Okay.
It's a roll call.
Yep, roll call. DeBash, Yakine,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Lewis,
Yes.
McKinney, Robinson, yes, Schwartz,
Yes.
Yes, trustee McKinney.
Since we have a shortfall in our, general fund,
Mhm.
I'm very concerned. And we've always had a large reserve. And for the new board members, we always had enough reserve to, in case we didn't collect any money, we could live off of our reserve and operate the township. And with all due respect to the employees, and after hearing Ricky's comments, and I would like to make a motion, and this is not permanent, it's temporary. We can have a report. And right now tonight, it seems like we're being rushed
Mhm.
into this. I would like to make a motion that we just bring us to hire,
Mhm.
and let's have a comprehensive evaluation on all races until we approve it. Like Ricky, you said. I'm sorry. Like Ricky, you said 2%. Well, if we had a comprehensive evaluation, we might be able to do 3%. We might have to do 1.5%, but we haven't had a chance. And God knows, I hope that doesn't happen. But we haven't had a chance, the new board members, to sit down and where are we in the township? We don't want to operate in a deficit, and it's just fair to the employees and to the residents. For example, coming out of Oak Brook tonight, our sign was knocked down. I don't know how many of you saw the Oak Brook sign.
Mhm.
We're going to have to get that repaired. That comes out of the general fund reserve.
It's another unexpected expense.
And that's just an example. So we don't want to operate on a deficit. And we don't have to approve those two things tonight. Can't we approve the budget and make a motion on these couple items, the hiring and the raises? And then let's do an evaluation and come back. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Are you there, Keith? I mean,
Yes, anything is possible, Brenda. I mean, you can pass the budget any way that you want, sure. And again, remember, the other side would be to pass it and then do amendments in January. So you can do it one of two ways.
okay, and I just want the audience, the public to know, I'm not saying don't hire. And I'm not saying no raises.
Yeah.
Let's let this board do a comprehensive evaluation and then come back. And, you know, we have senior citizens, and I'm an older adult. And this might not necessarily apply to me, but we do have older adults living in our township who's scared that their taxes are going to go up. I don't want to have to raise taxes to balance our budget.
Mhm.
They're afraid that if they raise their taxes, they won't be able to stay in their homes. And so before we make any decision like this, and we have to be mindful, these are not our tax dollars. These are the taxpayers' tax dollars. Any decision we make, we need to look out for the best interest of our residents. So all I'm asking, let's just put those two things on hold tonight, the hiring and the raise. And let's just do a comprehensive evaluation and then come back. And who knows, we might be able to come back with something better, Ricky. And we might not. I'm not making any promises. But let's give this board a chance. That's all I'm asking.
So I just
Thank
want to make sure I'm clear on the motion because when we approve this budget tonight, that would be approving it with the COLA raises as they currently are. What Brenda is suggesting is, so one, is there a motion to freeze hiring?
Yes.
Okay, and then is there a second motion to do a comprehensive evaluation of the budget as we approve it tonight?
Yes, for the raises.
So, okay, so should there be two separate motions made?
Yes. Or can we do it in one? Or do they have to be two?
You can divide the motion if you choose, or you can have a compound motion.
Whichever one the board is comfortable with. If you're comfortable with two motions, or if you're comfortable with combining.
Well,
May I say something, please? Ken? Ken?
Go for it, Keith. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a
this is one thing we gotta get fixed.
Yeah. Technology.
We gotta use some
I think
budget.
that his call got dropped.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was on our end or
Mhm.
his end. but he'll
Thank
have to
you.
call back.
Okay, in the absence of the controller,
Yes.
so I mean, my preference would be that we do two separate motions. That way discussion can be held on each item.
Visual.
Okay,
That would be my preference, not to speak for you, Ms. McKinney.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I need some support. So do I need to
Right.
do the motions over?
Yeah, I just want to be clear on what the motion is before
Why don't you restate the
restate the
motion?
motion.
Okay. I want to make a motion to freeze all hiring and let's have a comprehensive evaluation on the raises before we approve them tonight.
Are you combining them as one?
Yes. Yes, I'm combining
Okay.
them.
Did you want
It
to?
was I'm sorry, it was my understanding that trustee Green asked
Asked
that
for it
we
to
do
be
them individually so
Okay.
that we can have individual
Okay,
discussion.
okay,
Right.
I'll make a motion.
Correct?
Correct, that is correct. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'll make a motion to freeze all hiring.
Support.
Do we need a roll
Discussion.
call
Uh,
vote?
So yeah, just.
Would you like to open up to discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, please.
So, and you know, again, to the point that was kind of made earlier today, this budget was presented to the board, you know,
Mhm.
with a couple weeks, maybe, and like even today, we discovered new issues. And so, one thing that I know was talked about at the previous board, from the previous board, which I think would go hand in hand with kind of this comprehensive review, is individual HR person, part-time is my understanding. So, you know, if we were to do that freeze on hiring, and again, my understanding is that this wouldn't be a permanent freeze,
No.
but right. So, you know, I guess my thought process is, will we take into account our desire or lack thereof to have a HR person prior to doing the evaluation of the raises. I guess that's where my thought process is, because if we freeze hiring, then you can't hire the HR person, right? And then
Which wasn't a part of the budget to begin with.
right, I didn't think it was part of this budget. Yeah,
Okay, but I think that just answered your question.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
So now that answered your question. Okay,
yeah, thank you.
certainly.
And I want you to understand it's because of the shortfall. in the
Yeah, I
general
understand.
fund. That's the only reason why.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because we do have a shortfall in the general fund.
It's not a hard no, it's a signal to slow down.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't sound to me as though that there is any malice that's being done. It just sounds like we are looking to make sure that we are being very productive and constructive in a positive manner in what.
Because we're operating in a
Right now, that's what I
deficit.
mean.
Right.
Right.
Very
Let me be clear in stating that I don't believe that anybody on this board is operating with malice or
Okay. yeah.
anything like that. I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that we're clear as to the rationale of, hey, if we freeze hiring,
Mhm.
there wouldn't be an HR person hired, nor is there an HR person currently included in the budget.
That's right.
I just want that to be on the record.
Yes.
Mm.
So, yes, I understand the point, Brenda.
Mhm.
I just, again, kind of wanted that to be on the record and understood
Okay.
the public.
All right. Thank you.
So Brenda, is your motion hiring across the board or just hiring where the general fund would be
Across the
involved?
board,
Okay, so that include fire,
across the
I
board.
don't think that we
Law.
can do fire.
Pardon?
Yeah,
I think that fire that would be in contradiction to our contract. We can't do it for fire.
All because they have the
Yeah.
contract.
well,
They're union contract.
right, but looking at the budget, it's really the general fund that's got the problems
It
here.
is.
Fire has a significant surplus, building has a big surplus, law has a big surplus. And most of our law is done through the county, but we do need to hire an ordinance officer
Mhm.
and somebody to take care of that, which would probably come out of the building fund. So I would like to restrict that, like utilities is not in horrible shape,
Mm.
but definitely I'd like to see it be restricted maybe to just the general fund. That's the fund that we're having the issue with. And the other funds would have to come back to the board if they want to give raises, hire, fire, it all have to be done through the board.
I would like to emphasize the need for departments to approach the board to formalize hiring practices and to formalize a hire.
Well, if the board is comfortable, if you all are comfortable with that, it's fine. It's fine with me. And since the general fund is the only one with the deficit, I mean, we can just say general fund, if you all are comfortable with that.
So
Do
you're
you need
saying,
a formal amendment to that, to her original motion? I'm just asking.
so Brenda, sorry if I talk.
Yeah,
To
go
just
ahead.
Speak my 2 cents on this. I support trustee McKinney's original motion, but excluding fire, because that would be, contradicting what their contract is.
And are you comfortable with that, Supervisor Emily? I mean,
I'm comfortable including all funds except for fire.
okay, then that's what my motion will be.
Okay, so again, just to be clear, so the motion on the floor is to freeze hiring across the board with the exception of the fire department due to conflicts with their contract.
Yes.
Emily, may I interrupt?
Please, Keith.
For Ken, this is a special meeting. Can this motion be made when it's not on the agenda of this? I thought you could only talk about budgets on the special meeting
This is
and
part
not
of the
the hiring
budget.
freeze.
This is part of the budget.
No,
Well,
go ahead, Angie.
Yeah, it is the purpose, going back to the purpose, it is just for the budget. But I know that you're saying that it's part of the budget, but hiring
It's different.
is,
It's different.
Yeah, it's different. It's not really part of the budget.
So as a
I think
special,
that would have to be at a regular meeting as an agenda item.
yes.
so Brenda, if I may, Supervisor,
Mhm.
at a special meeting, we'd have to have a full complement here to deviate from the agenda.
Right.
And,
But if we're trying to balance the budget,
well,
which,
we've already passed the budget. That's done.
Yeah, so the purpose,
The purpose has been fulfilled, but if those are issues that you think are worthy of merit, we can take care of it at a regular meeting.
well, I do. I
Yeah,
do.
we can talk about this and move something on Monday.
Okay, because I do think it's very important.
yeah. it
Does
is
that
very
work?
important.
Okay.
So you're withdrawing your motion, I take it, Brenda?
Okay.
I'm not sure.
At this point, because
Because
this,
I can't not do it with the budget. Is that right?
no, because we're at a special meeting and we can't amend the agenda without a full complement. We don't have a full complement of board members tonight.
Okay.
That's why.
Okay.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you. Okay,
looks like we're done.
can I move to adjourn this meeting?
So
We
moved.
have to,
Support.
so did we vote to adopt? Did we adopt the budget or?
We did.
We voted
Yep,
on.
we voted on the
On
budget.
the budget,
Yep.
so yeah, we're done.
Just wanted
Yep,
to
so
make sure.
that's the end of the agenda and I move to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Just say all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Exciting first meeting.